with the news that Amazon MGM Studios now has complete creative control of the James Bond franchise, what does that pose for the future? Let's get into this. Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. New discussion video, James Bond 007. Yes, less than a week ago it was announced that the Broccoli's had given up control of James Bond. It is now sat solely with Amazon MGM Studios. What does that mean? What does that mean for this once great franchise? We're in an era now where we see a lot of franchises that were once great. Doctor Who, Marvel, Star Wars, Star Trek, they're all being run into the ground. Could the same be said for James Bond? Is that likely to happen now? It's an interesting question. Obviously, the last James Bond film we got was several years ago, and it was the movie No Time to Die. And as you know, at the end of that movie, fittingly, James Bond perished. He passed away, he died, he got killed. I say fittingly because is there a potential that this was on the cards back then? That these discussions were being had and the makers of said film knew that that was a possibility. It seems rather neat that the whole James Bond franchise has been wrapped up with the death of the character in that movie, and nothing has happened since apart from rumours, rumour mill, etc. And now we've got this news now. Call me cynical. I think that there was a potential that they knew this was going to happen. So that future with Amazon, under Amazon. Now, obviously we know what happened when Disney bought Star Wars. They milked that little cash cow, didn't they? They milked it. That's me milking a cow, nothing else. They milked it for all it's worth, and they ran it into the ground. Is the same going to be said for this franchise here? Okay, so first off, let's talk about the potential of castings of James Bond. And I'm not talking about who would play James Bond. I'm talking about the way in which they cast James Bond. Now, I've always said when people have come to me and thrown the name Henry Cavill at the ground saying, next James Bond, it should be the next James Bond, I always stood up and said, no, that's never going to happen. Reason being is because, same as the character of Superman, you always cast an unknown actor, an unknown entity, shall we say. You go all the way back to the first James Bond film. You had Sean Connery, right? Yeah, he was an actor, not as big as what he finally became, and a lot of that in part because of James Bond. Followed up with George Lazenby. George Lazenby being a complete unknown. Then we had Roger Moore. Roger Moore, who was big on the TV series The Saint at the time. After Roger Moore, we had Timothy Dalton. Timothy Dalton, although he'd done parts in some films, he was primarily a stage actor. Then we had Pierce Brosnan. Remington Steele, the TV series. Another TV show actor into the fray. And then we had, finishing up with, Daniel Craig. Daniel Craig, who had never, he'd never held a franchise or anything like that. He was just a bit part actor in movies. Okay, so you've never had a big actor don the role of James Bond. And the reason for this is because the Broccoli's, the producers, the makers of James Bond wanted you to be invested in the character of James Bond. They wanted you to see James Bond. They didn't want you to see the actor, okay, or another character. And this is where Henry Cavill comes into play. Because Superman, okay, so Henry Cavill has played a big character in a major franchise, almost headlining said franchise to a degree. So they would never go with it. However, is that casting now out of the window? Would Amazon Studios be inclined to now cast someone just by name recognition? Henry Cavill, for example, because he's Henry Cavill, not going with the tried and tested formula that came before. it's now very possible it's open to that kind of a thing. Now, we're talking about tried and tested formulas. James Bond was a tried and tested formula. These movies were big money makers, okay? And they were event films every time a James Bond film came along. It goes without saying that we saw a bit of a drop-off in quality in the past few James Bond films. I mean, me personally, I never even got to the end of No Time to Die. I never sat through that entire film because, in all honesty, I was bored. I never saw the death of James Bond. In my mind, the guy's still alive, out there, kicking around, doing what he does. And it's just a fever dream that he died. So, we're talking about now a tried and tested formula. Amazon have paid a lot of money to attain the rights to this, to have that full creative control, and they're going to want to see a return on their investment. And it ain't going to be long until you start seeing news of what's to come. One of the potential worries is spin-offs. A Q spin-off, a Moneypenny spin-off. That being said, it was reported the other day in the Sun newspaper, the Sun newspaper, don't know if it was reported anywhere else, that there was a potential Moneypenny spin-off show in the works that could come, starring Florence Pugh as the role of Miss Moneypenny, set in like the 1950s, 1960s, probably before the Moneypenny that we knew in the film, a younger Moneypenny. Inevitably, she's going to be getting up to spy shenanigans. She's going to be her own super secret agent kind of an individual before she steps into the role of the secretary. Now, I know this had been hinted at before in some of the latter James Bond films, but there we go. So, is that what anyone wants? That's the question. Is that what anyone wants? And then you could throw in a sort of cameo appearance by James Bond or someone like that. But then would that lead to loads of different James Bond castings? It's a question. Now, the idea of this show, when I read about it, it does remind me a lot of the DC TV series Pennyworth. Alfred the Butler and his kind of spy shenanigans before he became a butler, set in like 1950s, 1960s London. 1940s even, I think it may have gone back that far. Yes, but yeah, so the potential spin-off. Is there a character that you would like as a spin-off to James Bond? Right. I think the thing now is that, like I said, that the worrying thing is that it's the return that Amazon Studios is going to want for this character, the amount of money that they're going to want to make in as short amount of time as possible to see a return on their investment. And they will milk the character into the ground to get this. Now, I have seen some arguments say that, you know, Amazon Studios have made some quality products. You know, Reacher, the TV series, Fallout, the TV series, and then you've got the TV series The Boys. Now, we're talking about tried and tested formulas here. If Amazon went with a TV series much akin to this, and Amazon have produced some decent TV series, the difference is that the TV series that they have produced before have come from unknown quantities. Yeah, Fallout is an original TV series. The Boys is an original TV series. Reacher, yes, I know there were 2 films with Tom Cruise, but they didn't do particularly well, and they weren't. The fans of the books didn't gravitate towards them because of the casting of Tom Cruise. So again, it's kind of a fresh element to produce upon. It's not on the back of a tried and tested formula franchise, and this is the problem. So yeah, I mean, as time goes on, we will see what comes, but personally, I think you will see numerous spin-off series. I think you will see mini-series. I wouldn't be surprised if Amazon actually go back and start remaking the stories that have already been told. Dr. No, Casino Royale, set in that era that they are set in a mini-series format. I think that's the way they're going to go, rather than original new scripts. But will we then see a decrease in what made the James Bond films with all the special stunts and all this sort of a thing? Will we see kind of a decline in that and what the films have to offer? We're in a fresh era now. We're in a new era. I'm not overly excited for it. I think that it needs to be seen, okay? It could surprise me, but what can I say? I'm less than thrilled by the idea of it changing hands. Tell me your thoughts down below in the comments.